Alright, I have read the comments. I've seen what a lot of you have had to say, and today I'm stepping a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I'm gonna be giving you a Lanterns related video the way I've been doing it lately. This time it's going to be with Spider-Man and his villains. I need to make this abundantly clear to begin. There's a big reason why I don't do Marvel content on my channel, and that is mainly because I do not know Marvel the way I know DC. The only character I can say I know my fair share knowledge of is Spider-Man, and even that isn't saying much because I haven't read a Spider-Man comic book since the Ultimate Universe, and that was canceled how long ago now? So when I'm doing this, I need you guys to know I'm trying my best here. What I say here is what I think would work for these characters based off of my knowledge, but feel free to comment below if you maybe think I have misspoke, if I don't have the most accurate information about a particular character, or if you just think that it would be a different positioning for a certain character. But because Spider-Man has so many villains and arguably has a rogues gallery just as good as Batman's or on the same level, I chose to do 15 characters instead of the 12 I've been doing recently. My childhood love for Spider-Man has to count for something, so let's get into the first character here. Electro is who we're gonna be starting off with here, and I feel like there are a couple of options you could actually give him, but I'm personally going to place him as an Orange Lantern. From what I remember of Electro, he tends to be very greedy, and I feel like a lot of Spider-Man villains tend to be very greedy as well. But the Electro I remember tends to be very power hungry. He wants the fame and the money, and I mean, I came across this quote here that perfectly summed it up for me, where he says this: "Jewels, money, no matter how much I take, I want more, much more. And with my great power, nothing can stop me from getting it." I mean, let alone when you look at his OG green and yellow costume, which by the way, I think is cool. I've always liked that costume, but he just looks like a sleazeball. He looks like a dirtbag. He just looks like all he wants is money. So I'm gonna go orange. Next is Dr. Kurt Connors, or Lizard. I here decided to place him as a red ring. And my reasoning for this is because I believe when he is Lizard, there's practically no reasoning with him. I don't even think he can talk as the Lizard unless that has changed in Marvel Comics. I have no idea. I know they made him talk in the Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield, and I liked that iteration of Lizard, but even then, that Lizard was still very rageful, and I feel like a lot of versions we see of the Lizard is just an absolute force of destruction. I mean, can you really blame the dude who wants to be turning uncontrollably and unwillingly into a giant monster like that? It's really a curse. I think maybe Kurt Connors, outside of Lizard, would have a different ring. Just thinking off the top of my head, maybe you would give him blue. Maybe he would be hopeful. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I just kind of picture him that way. But I think that would kind of make sense because they're kind of polar opposites in that situation. You got the human side of him who's blue, and then you got the animal side of him, which is red. Moving on, we have Green Goblin, and for him, I have him as two rings that I think he could potentially utilize at the same time. That being yellow and orange. The yellow comes in specifically because of how he looks, and there are a lot of iterations of Green Goblin who looks quite scary or acts very scary. Also too, he brings a lot of chaos and destruction, which maybe could even mean red as well. But I feel like a lot of the reasons he brings the chaos is more so of a fearful standpoint than an anger or rage standpoint. When you bring in the orange conversation, I've always got this sense of Green Goblin, Norman Osborn to be more particular. He does want control. I mean more so as a shady businessman. To me, Norman Osborn has always felt like that shady businessman, someone who is just an ultra billionaire but is always looking for his next billion, even if it's in the most illegal ways possible. He does feel like Marvel's version of a Lex Luthor. And we all know businessmen like that can be very greedy. So I feel like Green Goblin could mix both fear and greed. Moving on to Dr. Octopus, and I have him as 2 rings as well. This is another character who could potentially utilize both these rings at the same time, or maybe he just has one or the other. And those 2 colors are red and orange. I think he is a person who has always felt like his intelligence has been diminished by people around him, but he's always had this idea that he is the smartest person in the room. He might even be the smartest person in the world. He does not maybe like the idea of being beaten out intelligently by other people, so he's on this constant need to prove to others that he is the smartest, to create this invention that proves to people, you're not smarter, I am. But then the red comes in because look where his invention and his experiment essentially left him. It left him forever bound to these metal arms. He's never going to necessarily be free from them. And that anger, that rage of wanting to be so smart, being so smart, and feeling like his intelligence let him down this path of now never being able to be unbound from those arms. I almost feel like it's a situation where he's so angry at how smart he became. The creation is amazing. The way it's attached to him is not so much. The idea is there, he just wanted it captured in a different way. Now we have Scorpion, and this is a character I only gave 1 option, and that option is red. Not only do I think the appearance of a Red Lantern suit would actually look really cool, but I do feel like he does have a lot of anger, especially towards J. Jonah Jameson, who is the main culprit for having Gargan the way he currently is today. What is going to make this man even more angry is the fact that he's never been able to truly exact his vengeance, or more so revenge, on J. Jonah, because he's always getting thwarted by Spider-Man. So that anger, that hate is always going to stick with him, and the more he fails that goal, the angrier he's going to become over time. Now we have Rhino, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, this is a character I've always kind of seen as a very surface level character, just your typical criminal within a gang who ends up being put into a massive Rhino suit and just uses that suit to constantly be angry. And that's why I have 2 options for him. It's either red or orange. The red is simply because whenever you see Rhino, he does always tend to be angry. He's just destroying and bashing everything in sight. And I mean, once again, red on Rhino would look really cool. But I also went with orange too, because he is your petty criminal. He is a thief. He's a burglar. I'm sure there's an argument to be made for many other colors for Rhino, but that's kind of who I know him for. For the next character, who is actually my favorite Spider-Man villain of all time, and on my top 3 list of favorite Marvel characters of all time, is Venom. I also gave him 2 options, either red or orange, although it would be really cool to see a symbiote take advantage of 2 rings at the same time. The symbiotes are always lusting for more power. They always want to be stronger. Orange could be a very surface level reason for a symbiote, or Venom in particular. So that's why red is ultimately my number 1 choice for him, and that is mainly because of his hatred for Peter Parker Spider-Man. The fact that Spider-Man got rid of the symbiote because it just wasn't good for him, and the symbiote held on to that grudge and carried on with it, forever hoping that one day the symbiote would be able to finally kill Spider-Man, or to once again take over Peter's body without ever letting him rip the symbiote off. Here we got Vulture, and I have 1 ring option for him, and that would be red. I do believe if there are people out there who know Vulture a little bit better than me, you could have many different options for him, but the reason why I went with red is because a lot of the times I see Vulture, to be explained, as a maniac. And not only does he carry a lot of rage for Spider-Man, but he uses a lot of rage for his business partner, who I believe screwed him over of a lot of money and maybe even some of their inventions together or something like that. So yeah, I mean, if I was Adrian Toomes, I would be pretty angry too. So moving on to another popular symbiote villain of Spider-Man, we have Carnage. And with Carnage, I also only gave him one ring. Now, to start off really quickly, I will say you could say he's red, and maybe he is red, but the main reason why I chose not to go that direction is because I don't think rage is enough to explain who Carnage is and frankly who Cassidy is. And also to a red ring on Carnage, I don't really know what that would do to his appearance. He would still just stay red. So instead, the ring I chose for Carnage is black. I think Carnage would just be death. That's pretty much the only thing Carnage inflicts and literally wants to do is kill and murder. Also, I think Carnage might be the closest version of a Joker for Spider-Man's villains, and I personally made Joker death because a lot of his end goals, a lot of what he does just results in the murder of so many people, and I feel like Carnage would literally just be that, if not somehow worse than the Joker. Now we have Mysterio, and the lantern ring I chose for him was yellow. You could probably convince me that maybe he should be orange, but the biggest reason why I decided to make him yellow is because of his particular powers and ability set. A lot of his magic, a lot of his illusions, it is fear-inducing. You can't really make sense of it when you're in the moment of it. It has your stress levels high, anxiety is high, you're terrified, and realistically, I feel like that is a lot of what Mysterio tries to do. Now, here we have a Spider-Man villain that I personally believe to be a top 3 Spider-Man villain in Kraven the Hunter, and I have 2 ring options for him. Either orange or, believe it or not, green, willpower. I had this idea for orange because I feel like he does have a very selfish tendency. It's always about him, it's always about what he wants, and the fact that he is undefeated, he's not beatable, it puts him at the top of the food chain. Whatever he owns, whatever he obtains, that status he holds is only owned by him. He knows it, he's worked for it, and he loves it. Although I think an even better option than orange for him is willpower, and my reasoning for this is because I see him a lot like a Bane, and whatever the purpose Kraven holds dear to him, the fact that he wants a warrior to best him, or whatever other thing he decides to put in his mind that he wants to do, he always has the willpower to stick to it and keep moving forward, keep pushing ahead. And I've talked about this before, that just because you are willpower doesn't mean you're gonna be the best person on the planet. You're not automatically good. And I do believe that Kraven, whereas he might not always be all bad, he's not always all good, nowhere near, and I think willpower would be very attracted to Kraven. Here we got Shocker, which is another character that I think tends to be a very surface level character. He's always kind of just reminded me of a petty thief, a bank robber of sorts. I have 2 rings for him, one being orange and one actually being indigo, and here are my reasonings for both. Orange is because of the idea that he's just a robber. He just wants materialistic things. He just wants money, and he wants more of it and more of it and more of it when he gets one of it. But I do believe that Shocker just straight up admits that he's not good at this. He's not good at being a criminal. He's not good at fighting Spider-Man. He's just not as good as some of these other villains. I feel like you could maybe use that as an excuse to get the Indigo Tribe involved, where they try and reform his character and make him a better person through compassion. Now we have a copycat villain in Hobgoblin, who is just a different colored green goblin, and for him I have an orange ring as well. I do believe the guy who is Hobgoblin, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he has literally been described to be a greedy businessman, somebody who just wants more than he can actually have, and when he sees something that other people have, he wants it and wants to ensure they can't have it. I mean, you could even tie that into his characteristics. He literally stole the persona of Green Goblin for himself. Next, we can't forget about Sandman here, who I also have 2 rings available to him, and that would be red and indigo. Red I simply have placed because, once again, he's got a lot of rage and a lot of hate for the situation he finds himself in. Unfortunately, being caught in an experiment that has turned his entire body into particles of sand. Now, obviously, he finds uses with that ability as time goes on, but many of those uses he uses to be a criminal and to exact his hatred against Spider-Man. Although I would go with Indigo being his main ring, because in many different iterations of Sandman that I'm pretty sure you see in comics, but we've seen in the movies, and even particularly in the new video game we just got, he has tried to reform, he has tried to change his ways and be, for a lack of a better term, more good than bad. Deep down, I think Flint Marko is always someone who just needs a little bit of compassion. Now, last character for this video, but of course certainly not the least of Spider-Man villains, I decided to go with Black Cat. Now, I'm not exactly sure if Black Cat today works the same way as Catwoman. I'm sure she does. She's probably not a straight up villain anymore. She's probably some sort of anti-hero, but I'm still going to use her because she is a popular character and she does act as a villain of Spider-Man sometimes. I have 2 options for her, and one is the obvious orange, the other one is Star Sapphire. Now, I'm pretty sure I told you guys at the beginning of the video there was going to be a lot of orange options, and there was a lot of orange options for characters. I just tend to find a lot of Spider-Man villains have a lot of greedy tendencies. When you are a thief, you're going to have a shred of greed to you because it's almost an addiction. You're going to keep doing it. And I think that might even be a more appropriate definition of what the orange ring is. It's the addiction of greed. It's the idea that once you do it once, you're going to continuously do it more and more and more to the point where you can't stop. And I mean, just look at Larfleeze in DC. He can't stop. Although, the reason why I also chose Star Sapphire for Black Cat is mainly because she does have love for Spider-Man, and I'm pretty sure she has had love for other characters in the Marvel Universe. Her love for Spider-Man, whether when they're together or even after they're together, her affection for people like him and other people around her are strong enough to consider her as a Star Sapphire. But there you go, everyone. Those are the 15 characters I decided to go with for Spider-Man's villains. So like I said, I am not the most knowledgeable in Marvel. That's pretty much why I refrain from doing Marvel content in the first place, but I thought I'd give it a shot because I do like Spider-Man, I do like a lot of his villains, and there is some stuff I know about these characters. So leave in the comments below if there's maybe anything I got wrong, or maybe you just think they would be different colors than the ones I gave them, and if there are any other Spider-Man villains that I left out and you want to comment on what colors they would be, go ahead and do that as well. That is all I have for you on this video, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed it, and until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.